welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 23. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite albums or playlists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this very podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my good friend,
Matt Rundquist. Hey, Travis. This week, I watched the movie Ex Machina, and you listened to Betty Who.
Yes. In fact, I also watched Ex Machina again. As is my wont, generally. I will try to rewatch the movies if I hadn't seen them very recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like doing that. I was doing a little bit of, I don't know what that was, my little radio announcer voice. With me, as always, is my good friend.
Travis, I love your voice so much. I edit all the episodes for our audience who don't know, and I'm always a little bit embarrassed listening to our voices together. I'm like, Travis sounds like super professional, and I sound like a guy. Like, I'm fine, but I'm a guy. You've got the voice.
You're better than just a guy. I appreciate that, and I think you also have a little bit of problem with people listening to themselves, and so listening to yourself might ding you points. I personally find your voice delightful, and I listen to it, and it's wonderful.
Oh, that's so sweet. Gosh, this is the sweetest episode so far.
So, Matthew, how was your week?
Interesting, I think, is the official term for it.
Like a Chinese curse sort of way?
Not that interesting, no. But
not that interesting. Okay.
As you know, my wife had her surgery this week. Came through with flying colors, but the recovery process for open abdominal surgery is a challenge, you know. So each day has been a little bit better, but I think not as better as we would have hoped each day. Like, she's still in a lot of pain, still mostly hanging out, and that's frustrating for a very active person, very go-getter type of person. So.
Oh yeah, I know. That reminds me of when I broke my ribs last year, and it just the frustration of not being able to move is very real. I get it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So that was 9/10 of the week, but I did get to watch a fun movie and do a fair bit of gardening this week as well. As you know, here in the Midwest, it's early summer, and a big part of early summer in the Midwest is planting vegetables and preparing beds and planting flowers and making sure that the midsummer, end summer, and early fall are all covered in blossoms and the bounty of the earth. We have water here, let's use it.
That's wonderful. I actually had a little bit of a green thumb thing going on myself. Loquat season is the springtime here in LA, and loquats are a little fruit.
That sounds made up to those of us in the Midwest.
It's not. It's not. It's a little fruit that is. It's not something that is shipped because the skin is very delicate and the fruit is very soft, or the flesh is very soft. I would kind of describe it as a cross between a pear and a tangerine. Like, it has that kind of almost citrusy flavor, but the texture of a pear. The other problem is that there's very little flesh for fruit volume because so much of it is taken up by seeds, the giant seeds in the middle of it. So Loquat, if you want to look it up, and but I think they're so delicious. And what's funny is that they're loquat trees just around LA, right? Okay. And I didn't discover them until I was walking years ago, 10 years ago or so, in my old neighborhood. And we came upon this guy who was tossing like a jacket wrapped up in a belt up into a tree to try to knock these fruits down. And I was like, "What are you doing, man?" And he's like, "Oh, it's loquats." And he hands me one. And I'm like, "I'm not going to eat a fruit off of a tree just in the middle of the city." And he's like, no, do it. And so I was like, okay. So I tasted it, and it was so good. And then I found out that we had a bigger loquat tree in our backyard behind our apartment that you could actually, because of the retaining wall behind the apartment, you could climb up kind of into the tree and pick all these fruits. So I grew to love it, and now I have found a couple of loquat trees around my neighborhood in the valley, and I just picked a bunch, and then I saved the seeds, and I was like, what if I plant my own? And so my green thumb victory is that I planted about 15 seeds, and I have about 9 little baby trees growing now.
Well, that's extremely exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my little victory. Coco is doing well. She we've been together now a month. She is now 10 months old, and she's doing pretty well. She did have a couple of casualties, I guess. And she seems to have a thing for my eyewear for some reason because
Ooh,
the
yeah.
first thing she ate was my swim goggles. And then she ate my actual glasses, which was frustrating because they were. I use them to see, first of all, but also they are. I have backups, but my backups are single vision, and my regular glasses are not binoculars. What is that called?
Progressive
Bifocals.
bifocals.
Progressive bifocals, they are, yeah. And they're so. Once I got them, it was so nice to be able to look at my phone on the bottom of the glasses, but then
Yeah.
also see out in the world rather than have to lift up my glasses to see my phone, or try to see them under the.
Yeah, last year was my introduction to progressive bifocals as well. And you
Yes.
being so young in your late 20s and already needing
Right.
progressive bifocals.
I know it's tragic.
Incredible.
It's very surprising, but hey, you know what? I'm aging with humility as I near my 30s. So the other than that, a couple of auditions. It was a fairly light week because the strike persists here. So
Yeah.
we're although interestingly, the Directors Guild struck a deal apparently, which is
Ooh, that's not good news.
it's not good for the writers necessarily, but I think the actors are going to hold strong for their deals, and maybe the
Okay.
writers or the directors weren't. Maybe the directors weren't kind of looking for the same things. I don't
Sure.
know. So, but we'll see. I think the actors are probably going to start striking in July, and
Okay.
we'll see what happens then.
Yeah.
Whew. But yeah,
Wow. Well, solidarity as always on this end of the nation. Hey, what do you say we get into it?
let's get to the meat.
The meat of the episode.
Yeah, you shake things up and start with something first.
I think we should switch things up
We
and
definitely
start with
should start
the music. That's what I
music
think.
first. All right.
So-
Well, Matt, tell us about Betty Who.
This week we have singer, songwriter, electro pop diva Betty Who. She's not exactly in the same. I mean, she's kind of in the same genre as like your Lady Gagas and your, Katy Perry's and so forth. But she's definitely coming at it from a more indie angle and sort of a do-it-yourself kind of person. I love her music. It's very upbeat. It's very positive. I was first exposed to it in Spencer's Home Depot proposal video, which was a wildly viral flash mob proposal in a Home Depot. Super gay, super lovely, tears everywhere. And
Yeah.
the song Somebody Loves You by Betty Who was in that. I searched her out. I listened to her first couple albums. I love them. I'm not as into her most recent album, but it's still good. And I put together a playlist for you.
Yeah.
My
I definitely
favorite
want to
song-
talk about.
Yeah, my favorite song
Go
is
ahead.
definitely "Somebody Loves You." It's just a great piece of pop magic. But yeah, tell me what you thought.
Well, so I want to talk about that proposal video because I had seen it back in the day. I was one of YouTube showed me that I had watched it, and I kind of remembered it. And I do like those proposal videos where you get a song and someone like there's one where they're in a car and the car is driving down the street and everybody's doing singing along to it. And so I like that, and in my heart of hearts, that's how I would like to be proposed to by my future husband. But so I had a cynical thought because ultimately, I guess I won't bury the lead here and say I didn't love Betty Who
Mm-hmm.
as much as I thought I was going to. If you remember last week, I was very excited for this kind of
Sure.
like dance pop type, queer, even like a lot of like that video was used by a gay couple. And anyway, so I'm listening to this, and I guess my short review is that I thought it was fairly generic to me. And so what that made me think, and I was looking back on this this proposal video and thinking, what a great way to market your video or your song.
Yeah.
Like, because that video seemed very well produced. Like, A, it's in a business. B, it's got a lot of people. It's got dancers who are all in multiple colors, and and several of them look fairly, good. They're not great dancers, but they're good dancers. And then they've got the family and like all the family. So let's fly in grandpa and grandpa, but also have a couple people on the iPads. It felt like it very much could have been planned. I mean, obviously it was planned, but like designed by a marketing company.
Are you now on the Spencer's Home Depot proposal video conspiracy theory website right now?
No, but I will note that that is the only video on his YouTube channel. So that, I mean, he got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, or maybe not hundreds of, but thousands of subscribers from that video. He very easily could have parlayed that into some sort of YouTube fame, I guess. The couples channel doing, this is what we're doing, and they didn't. So I don't know. Maybe that means they're just not together anymore, or what. But regardless, it just made me think about that, and I think it all boiled down to the fact that I found Betty Who to be a little uninspired, and I think I was trying to find a suitable metaphor for it, and I feel like a good one is those actors that you see that are okay. Like I mean I don't want to pick on soap opera actors because I know a lot of soap actors, but like generally you look at a soap opera and the acting is serviceable,
sure.
Right?
And let's not even put it on the actors necessarily. The production schedule of a soap sort of demands that level of acting, regardless of how good the actual actor is or isn't.
Yeah. But in this case, Betty Who is pretty. She sounds fine. She sounds good. And I didn't get any. I wasn't moved by any of the songs. And one of the second song on this playlist is "I Love You Always Forever," which is a cover of help me out here.
I didn't know it was a cover. I'm sorry.
It's a cover of a Donna Lewis song, and I went back and listened to the original, and there's so much feeling in it that I was kind of lacking in the Betty Who version. And even a couple of the Betty Who songs that are slower, like California Dreams, something like that. California Rain. It was the last song on the playlist. It was just kind of like, all right, it's just almost too slow, too with that not much emotion for me. And so I guess I compare her to artists like Lady Gaga or Sia or some of
Kylie Minogue,
some of those other kind of pop.
Yeah,
Kylie Minogue is a great example where she's got, like, you listen to All the Lovers and it has got so much like passion and joy, and I just kind of lacked that from Betty Who. So
I think this is all a fair read from you, and I'll say this, right? I like Betty Who, and I love the song "Somebody Loves You," but I don't listen to her newer stuff. It hasn't really grabbed me the way her older things did. And when I was listening to this playlist this week, there was a sort of like, is this the same song? Oh no, this is a different song, right? There was just sort of that feeling of, I mean, this is all very pleasant and well produced and well sung, but it's not super duper moving. I am a bigger fan of the slower songs. Like if I'm picking songs from this playlist that are more moving to me, it is the slower songs. But I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, I did like "Just Thought You Should Know." I thought that was a fun song, and probably my favorite of this playlist, if I'm going to pick one. But yeah, if I was at a dance club and I tell you, how sometimes I'll play a playlist on a walk or something like that, and I'll get halfway through it and then I'll start it over again on my next hike or walk or whatever. On this last one today, I went ahead and skipped Somebody Loves You.
Mm.
I was like, nah, I just don't need to hear it again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's I would never skip that song. We're definitely not on the same page there.
I was surprised at myself. I was surprised at this kind of read from myself. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't in some sort of mood the first time
Uh-huh.
through,
Yeah.
And today I'm in a perfectly happy mood today, and this was still kind of my impression of it. So I was just gonna say I would be curious to hear about where she comes from, how she was discovered, who's producing her albums, that kind of thing, and see like is she from what's is she a product of something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny, right? There is, and I've been introducing you to some of these women, but there is sort of like a pipeline for these young female singer-songwriter types who, move out to LA and get an album or get hooked up with some high-level producers and end up getting a few hits and then not really doing a whole lot. And I'm thinking of people like Ava Max and oh gosh, who's that car song? She blew up. Olivia Rodrigo. Now they're very talented, and I think they're always. I think the music industry knows that there's a place for this type of music, right?
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
female upbeat pop singer songwriter, like Taylor Swift, can only release so many albums, and not all of them are
Yep.
going to be pop albums, right? So we want to fill and sort of the people who are into music like this, right? The gays and 14-year-old girls, there
Right.
there is sort of an insatiable need for like more product, right?
Yeah,
If you're
it's very different from my personal kind of thing is where I find someone I love and I will love them for forever. There is a very like what's new is most important
yeah,
energy in at least the gay community, in the dance community and stuff like that.
yeah,
So I get
for
that.
sure.
I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't begrudge anything. Again, I think she's fine. Just didn't really tickle my fancy.
I will say she's a fun live performer as well. Very enjoyable. I've seen her live a couple of times. I did not see her. Like I said, she played Milwaukee just last week at Pride Fest,
Oh,
and I missed out on that. But she is a really fun live show. If you ever have the chance to see her, it's a good show, and because she hasn't reached that sort of next level, the tickets generally aren't too expensive. So
yeah, okay. That's great. Well, and I love that she has that kind of pride concert energy to her and
sure.
that's where she's doing. Oh,
Well, and there's also nothing wrong with. I mean, I don't think we're damning with faint praise to be saying that there's nothing wrong with like being pretty good at something like this, right? This is a
yeah.
hard thing. This is a hard thing to be pretty good at, you know.
It is. It is.
It's
Yeah.
just
And
not.
she's and yeah. Yeah, and in fact, and I wonder if I don't know. I feel like I did wonder if what is lacking from her is in her or in her production, right?
Yeah.
So or in the studio who the
Right.
label who makes
Producer.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So she certainly has a great voice. Her voice is fantastic, and I guess maybe I should look into seeing a video of her performing live and see if I see what I think of that. But yeah, yeah.
Well, Travis, why don't you give it a rating? I think we're ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say so little about it, but I just I think I'm just gonna go right down the middle of the road and probably give her a 5.
Okay. Okay. I will say
I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it.
I listened to this playlist that I put together, and except for Somebody Loves You, I would say I pretty much agree with you. So Somebody Loves You for me is a 10 song straight across.
Interesting.
I would listen to it. I would listen to it anytime you put it on. That said, the rest of the playlist was kind of a 5 to me, so I'm going to give this a 6.
Okay, great, great. I love that. Well, let's move on to the movie then. I had you watch the movie Ex Machina, which came out in 2014, which it sounds like it feels like that's a long time ago. I felt like it was much more recent than that, but no, it was directed by Alex Garland, who was a compatriot of Danny Boyle. So he and Danny Boyle collaborated a lot, where Alex Garland actually wrote 28 Days Later and Sunshine and then Dredd, the reboot of Judge Dredd, which was actually pretty good. And then this, he went ahead and directed this, which was, I thought, a brilliant sci-fi kind of psychological thriller. Very simple premise. Donald Gleason shows up at this house out in the middle of a Alaskan wilderness, and the house is owned by this like Mark Zuckerberg level tech founder guy, played by Oscar Isaac, who was big in the Star Wars sequels, right? And Oscar Isaac has created a robot, and we discover that Donald Gleason is there to perform a Turing test on the robot to determine whether this robot has consciousness. And yeah, it didn't do a whole lot of business at the time. I don't think. I think it did. Let's see, $37 million on a $15 million budget, so it made a little bit of money, but not. It was not a huge movie, but I love it, and I love some of the scenes in particular. Just really hit me. My acting like brain. I love it, and I think that the robot is played by Alicia Vikander, who went on to do the reboot of Tomb Raider, which was I didn't actually watch, but didn't get great reviews. But here she does some very interesting and subtle acting work as this humanoid robot. So, yeah, what do you think?
I really liked this a lot. I have some quibbles, like always, but
Hmm.
I liked it a lot. Let's start with the cast, which is very small. It's three primary actors: Donald
Yep.
Gleason, Alicia Vikander, and Oscar Isaac, who, let's be honest, is completely unrecognizable with a beard. Right?
Yeah,
You
and
wouldn't
bald
think.
head and that beard. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Oscar Isaac. I love him in the prequel or the sequels. I know you don't like the sequels as well as I do, but even
He's fine in them. I just don't
oh,
like
I
him.
think he's fantastic in them. And
Yes, I'll give you
he's
that. I'll
way
give you
better.
that.
He's way better than the material, and I like the
Yes.
material.
Yes, I
Um,
agree with that.
so, so he's very good in this. It's an interesting role because, spoiler alert, he's the bad guy. But it's not super duper clear early on whether or not he's the bad guy. Donald Gleason is, I didn't really think about it a whole lot, which maybe doesn't say. I was thinking it says a bad thing about his performance, but maybe it just means like he really subsumed himself in the role. I think he was very functional. I think
Yeah. Well, he's also the connecting character. He
he's
kind
the
of
connecting character.
represents the audience in this
Yeah.
movie.
Alicia Vikander is, I'm 100% on board with you here. She did amazing work because most of it is not reacting. It's almost like a Vulcan. So I've been watching Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager for the last 6 months or so, and so I've been meeting a lot of Vulcans, right? And this
Yeah.
character has a lot of similarities to the way Vulcans are played on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's all very subtle. It's not emotionless, but it's guarded.
Right.
And when
Because
she,
it's not Data. It's
no, it's not
because Data
Data.
as an android is very emotion free.
Yes.
So this character is very different.
Yeah. And when those moments of, I'm thinking specifically of her smiles. There's a few moments when she smiles that communicates an immense amount to the audience. Really, really good stuff. I loved
Hmm.
her performance in this. Really good.
Yeah.
The movie itself, the premise is, it's like, I want to read it for being a ridiculous premise, right? Like This guy lives all alone above the Arctic Circle. The reason we know we're above the Arctic Circle is that the sun never goes down. Um, he's completely alone. Nobody's dropping groceries off or anything, right? Because the helicopter is not allowed within miles of his house. And yet he has everything he needs to build, spoiler alert, multiple copies of these extremely high level artificial intelligence robots, right? So like there's this like no superhero movie part of my brain that wants to go, this premise is so insanely ridiculous, right? Like, what if the guy needs a screwdriver that he doesn't have, like
Well, I mean, like you look at some of these richest people in the world, like you look at a Jeff Bezos or a Mark Zuckerberg, and they've got so much money. They're building spaceships and yachts that have other yachts inside them, and like,
yeah,
I could see that
they're
a guy
doing those things with other people, right? The premise of this movie is that he's all alone and not like he's relying on no one else, right?
I see what you're saying.
I just didn't like that. Doesn't ring true for me. I understand the structure of the story demands it, and so I'm willing to forgive it a little bit, but I don't want to let it go unnoted that this is a ridiculous premise, right?
Right. Well, and they do try to square that peg a little bit by saying that he's such a genius that he basically created. It's as if Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook at 13,
right?
And that's how brilliant this guy is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, honestly, I didn't even think about that element of it. The fact, I mean, some of it, like. In my head, I'm like, okay, how is he getting supplies? I'm like, okay, well, he's getting a lot of supplies once a month or something like that.
Right.
And the helicopter, I think, is closer than miles because the guy walks there with his luggage, and so it's just kind of like along the river a little bit. But yeah, I get your point. So,
but anyways, so the structure of the movie is interesting, right? We see that Oscar Isaac is drowning himself in alcohol, and we don't understand why at first. Alcohol and exercise, actually. And as we learn about what's going on, we learn that he's basically trying to dull his own emotions from doing some pretty awful things, but not stopping himself from doing those awful things, right? And all of that is, I think, rings really true. And all the stuff. So to skip to the end, right? She does escape. She was probably playing Donald Gleason all along, which, my romantic comedy loving heart, right, was so broken by this.
Yes.
By this reveal.
You wanted them to be
because the right, like, when I see a movie and there's like a meet cute or like sparks fly or anything like that, like I want it to work out. That is the type of movie that is like right in my wheelhouse. Is like, oh, those people just gave each other a meaningful look over a spilled Starbucks cup. Clearly, they're meant to be together forever. And this movie plays on that a little bit, plays on that expectation. So the fact that she was really just stringing him along to use him as a way to escape, I struggled with it at the end. I was like, wait, why did she leave him at the end? Wasn't she was, I thought she was going to come back for him, and no, she really was just playing him. The ending itself is, there's an awful lot of audience having to connect dots that don't connect, and I don't want to get
like what? Like what do you mean?
Well,
just give it like briefly.
Well, so somehow the helicopter comes and picks her up, even though the helicopter pilot is not expecting her, right?
Right.
Doesn't even know that she's there, and somehow he's convinced not only to pick her up but to not pick up Donald Gleason.
Well, I thought about that, and that doesn't seem such a big deal for me. Like if imagine if you're that helicopter pilot, you work for this rich guy, and you show up, and this woman walks out, and she's like, and I'm sure she could make up some lie to say, "Oh, this guy is Caleb is staying, and I'm just going home. I've been here for years or whatever, and I'm going, and Nathan said to take me. Okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's a reason that they hid whatever dialogue that was behind the helicopter blades, right? Because
I think it just doesn't matter in the end. Yeah.
well, you say it doesn't
What?
matter, but there was part of me that's like, wait a minute, the helicopter pilot just abandons this guy out in the tundra? Like that doesn't seem
Well, but
right.
there is there is communication to the outside world. So if they needed another helicopter ride, they can get one, right? So he doesn't know anything's wrong. Secondly, we've already shown that she's so inventive in playing people that why can't she play this helicopter pilot?
I'm not saying that this circle can't be squared. All I'm saying is that it it bothered me like in the moment, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
then she just goes to a city. How? We have no idea. She what else does she do? There's another little
She's
grace
so
note at the
smart.
end.
She has access to all
Yeah.
the banking information in the world. She
Right.
can,
Yeah, there's a lot of hand waving going on that
but again, it doesn't matter. That's not
well,
part of this story.
but see, here's the thing. It's not part of this story, so I don't understand why it's there.
Because that's her dream. Because that was the one thing she said that was true. That she
Yeah.
just wants to go people watching at the
Yeah.
intersection.
Yeah.
And I love that shot. That shot of her shadow with the other shadows walking by. It's such a beautiful. Um, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, no, it's one of those shots that's like deliberately confusing, and then your brain wraps itself around what's happening. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I will say that this is, I think, the third time I've watched this movie now, and I enjoyed it just as much as the first couple. In fact, I see little bits here and there that make it a little bit more, uh, give a little deeper meaning to a point here and there, or the foreshadowing that holds up, stuff like that. I found very satisfying on this repeated viewing. So
okay,
yeah. Uh,
yeah. What else do I want to say? It's very interesting production design. It's good stuff. It
Yeah, the special effects are solid, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
I
I'm
guess it's
mostly referring to the design of the house and like
of the house.
research
Yeah,
facility.
all of it. Yeah,
I think really, gets across. It really tells you more about Oscar Isaac's character without us having to be super obvious about it. It also, you know, Donald Gleason and Alicia Vikander at the beginning are on opposite sides of a barrier, and so it
hmm
makes it very explicit that she is a prisoner very early on, right?
yeah,
Which I thought did a lot of work plot wise that in a way that was really subtle, and I do like that where like your brain isn't having to work overly hard to figure it out, but there's not just like a hey, is this lady a prisoner? Why, yes, she is, right? There's not like the super exposition-y type dialogue. So I appreciated that the production design really served the story.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad you liked it. And I also appreciated the score. Is anything strike you on the music as a music guy?
What's funny is that I am like the music guy in this relationship, but musical scores generally just wash right over me, right? And
Yeah.
I feel a little bad for saying that because I know some people are like super duper into scores, and when I hear scores, like the sort of the great scores, right? Your Jaws and your Star Wars and
Right.
your Hunt for Red October and your Titanic, right? I like them, right?
Right.
But they're never the first thing I think about when I think about the movie, and they're never the fifth thing that I think about when I think about the movie. So,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know, I
Well,
feel.
but if you
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I love scores with themes, and especially good themes, and we don't get many theme songs these days anymore. But I did notice on this viewing how fitting the music is for moments like when things turn dark. The music is just so like perfectly dark, and
What did you think of the extreme homoeroticism of his arrival at the house? Like there's a moment there where you're like, are is did he bring him here to seduce him? there was definitely there was definitely just a moment there where I
uh,
was like, this is a choice.
Interesting. I didn't see that really.
Okay.
I just I was more, I think for me Oscar Isaac was more of a that savant, uh that kind of tortured genius, who was a little bit not good with people, like, and he's
Hmm.
just kind of used to his own way. I thought it was played very well. um uh, but yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I don't know if I show up as only the second person at a locked facility and the person that I'm supposed to meet is in the middle of a very sweaty workout in a frame or a oh god, what's it called? An A tank. I can't remember what the
Oh,
it's like
tank top.
yeah, it's a tank top, but there's a word for it and I can't remember
Oh,
now and I feel bad. Um but like and a very jacked dude for that, to that point,
sure.
right? Like there's part of me that's like, have I walked into a situation here? You know,
Interesting. No, I didn't get that.
that's
So,
fair. That's fair.
well, you want to give it a rating?
Sure, I'd love to give it a rating. Man, if only the ending had been like 90 seconds shorter,
Hmm.
because a lot of my problems with the movie are in that ending and like things that I was just like, oh no, oh no, oh no, right? Like if she had just like walked off into the tundra and then there was like a cut to black, I would have given this movie a 9 edging towards 10, right? But as it is, this is an 8 for me.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
I like the ending because it gives a little more of a. I think it makes it feel more dangerous. Like she made it. Like she is out in the world and doing her thing. And so, like as a thriller, I feel like it's much more satisfying to see that she's done that. And now, like it's almost a like a Westworld type thing. Like what is she gonna do now? Is she stoppable? And Donald Gleason is probably dead, trapped in that room back in the house.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I mean, the
um,
once a month food delivery will come soon, so
yeah. Well, is he gonna last a month? I don't know.
I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I think this is hmm. Is it a 10? Is it a 10? Is it a 10? Is my question. I think that it is. You know what? I'm going to give it a 9 just because I do wonder how well this will hold up over time,
Okay.
you know? And but I think pretty well, but I'm going to hedge my bet just a little bit and say that it's a 9. And there are also some things that are weird that I thought were maybe weird for the sake of being weird versus for story purposes. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we got a
But
little time.
ultimately, I really love
Actually,
it.
no, I'm curious about that point. We've got a little time here. So,
Mhm.
what do you think might have been weird for the sake of being weird?
Like the dancing scene. Like, what's the deal with that? Like, did you program this dance routine into this non-speaking, previous generation robot so that you could dance with her by yourself? Did you do it so that you could dance with her so that some in front of this guy or in front of people? I mean, what's the process? Did you do it by doing a dance and having her watch you do it just so she could
Hmm.
learn it?
Hmm.
It's a cool scene. It's very weird and kind of like
Menacing.
disturbing, a
Yeah.
little disturbing, but
Yeah.
just ultimately is like why though?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just
This.
but ultimately it fits with the disturbing nature of the story. And like when it's funny when Donald Gleason's character Caleb, when he cuts himself open to make sure that he's not an android, he's only been there a week, less than. But you're also kind of like, yeah, I kind of get it. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
to me like too much psychosis, even though he's a fairly normal guy.
Him cutting himself absolutely makes sense. It's a summer camp situation. I don't know if you ever went to like a week-long summer camp, but the relationships that you form at summer camp are incredibly intense, right?
Yes, when you're a kid, but that's how...
Well, no, but I mean, that's what I'm saying is like when you're isolated with people and spending all your time with them, the intensity of the experience and the intensity of the emotional reaction is very high. So absolutely that makes sense. The thing that didn't make sense to me is that was a very long cut on his arm that absolutely needed to be stitched up.
Didn't need to be that big.
Or did not need to be that big, and it needed to be stitched up, and that would bleed for hours or potentially days if you didn't have proper bandaging, which I don't know where he got that or how
I get you. And I think for me, I'm like, okay, he's probably not a doctor on site, but there probably is a well-stocked first aid kit with future medicine, medicines and first aid stuff that's 15 years in the future or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah. So that didn't bother me. But I did think, that you didn't need to make it that big to prove that you weren't a robot.
Yeah, because the skin peels off very easily when you find the edges of the robots. It's just like it's and he's seen that at that point. He's seen how easily it comes off, and clearly it was not going to come off that easily. But he just kept digging with that razor blade. So
yep, yeah, exactly. So a scene that also not strictly necessary for the story and maybe doesn't quite work, but does ramp up the psychological effectiveness of it.
For sure. All right.
Yeah, I'll go with a 9.
Okay, so a 9 from you, an 8 from me. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have
what
something?
You got for me for next week?
Oh, you want to hear what I've got? Well, what I have for you.
Generally, I like to hear your selection first.
Yeah, this feels a little uneven to me, but I'll survive. I'll survive.
Really? I mean, I could go first if you really wanted. Does it affect your choice?
Because your
choice. See, that's the thing. Your choice often does affect my choice.
Yes, my choice affects your choice. Yes,
sometimes
it does. So, are you familiar with the band Interpol?
No, I'm familiar with the Interpol.
Okay, so there's a band called Interpol. They burst onto the scene right around the year 2000. They're from New York.
Nice. I do love bursting.
Yes, they're sort of an indie guitar-based band. What to say about them? There was a series of bands that like came up out of like the Brooklyn hipster scene, and they were sort of the top dogs in that for a while. They very famously got a 10 on their debut album from Pitchfork Media, which was the most influential review site for a certain type of music fan in the early 2000s. Wow. It was their album of the year, and it's a very, very good album. It's called Turn on the Bright Lights. But that's not the album we're going to listen to. We are going to listen to an album, but it's going to be their second album, Antics. So They were wildly popular for a certain level, right? It's not like they were getting played on the radio or anything. Wildly popular, signed to a major label, Interscope, and they released this album, Antics, and it's, I think, fantastic. I don't know if you're going to love it, but I feel like I've been lobbing you some softballs lately, and I want to give you something that's maybe a little bit more challenging, but is also very...
I don't know that Gordon Lightfoot was a softball.
But also very, very rewarding. So... Yeah.
Okay.
So
great.
I think you'll like
I'm excited as always. Okay, you think I'll like it? Great. I am definitely excited to try it. Well, that's not necessarily the point of this podcast, is not necessarily to give me something I'll like, but to expose me to something, right?
Yeah.
To expose me to something you like, which is one of the things I like about this project.
Yeah.
That being the case, do you have a mood that you're in, especially after the surgery and all that? Do you have a particular kind of movie that you'd like to do? I've got a selection. I've got a whole...
No, I think I'm really very open right now. Do tell. I'm just
Okay.
taking in recovery. You have to take what the world gives you, and so that's where I am right now mentally. I'm taking whatever
I
is
mean, I
given.
don't want to give you something super scary or like intense.
Hmm.
I do have a couple of ideas for things that I'd like to do, but I think I'm gonna give you a little how about a little popcorn action movie?
Ooh, a popcorn
Something,
action movie.
yeah, something just light and I mean non important but fun action. Okay,
Okay.
I'm gonna give you Kingsman: The Secret Service,
Kingsman: The
which
Secret
is
Service.
it's the first of a trilogy of movies. It was directed by Alex Vaughn, who had previously done X-Men First Class, which I think is a brilliant X-Men movie. You won't like it because it's superheroes, whatever. But the Kingsman is a spy movie. It's like a fun, funny, updated James Bondy type story, right? It's got gadgets, it's got world-ending stakes, it's got fighting and shooting and stuff like that. And it
So it's
also
like Austin
stars.
Powers.
Well, Austin Powers is a comedy; it's a straight-up comedy. But imagine but imagine a James Bond with a more of a sense of humor, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so it stars Colin Firth as the spy, as the main spy, right? Which
Okay.
is great because he's not someone anybody would ever have cast as a spy in his entire career. But it also is the breakout role for Taron Egerton, who recently did he win the award, or I think he was nominated for playing Elton John in Rocket Man,
Okay.
and also has Samuel L. Jackson and Michael Caine and Mark Strong, and it's just a fun cast. And it's from back in 2014, so actually the same year as Ex Machina. So that's interesting. But yeah, I think you'll have fun watching it at the very least. I don't know if you'll love it. Here's the interesting thing: I dislike the sequel quite a bit. And then the third movie is better but not as good as this one. So this is one of those things where the first movie hit a bunch of right buttons for me, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. I haven't seen it in many years, so I'm definitely going to watch it again this year with you, or this week, and I'm looking forward to talking about it next week.
Well, that's really exciting. I do want to point out that I was teasing you a little when I said it was like Austin Powers. I was not being serious. So,
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know. We've established movie knowledge is not great. Um, or it's not the I don't know. I would have forgiven you for saying that and not judged
uh,
you. That's the
well,
thing. I was not at
I
all.
appreciate the lack of judgment. And you know what else I
If you had said that
appreciate?
in sincerity, what do you appreciate, Matt?
I appreciate that you're exposing yourself to me.
Oh, Matt, I appreciate you exposing yourself to me. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right,
Hey,
buddy. Well,
before we go, we should talk briefly
yes,
about Facebook. You,
yes.
listener, should contact us on our Facebook. It's Exposing Ourselves, or send us an email at exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you thought of Ex Machina. Tell us what you thought of Betty Who. Tell Travis he's wrong about Betty Who. We love you all. Good night.
Wait, and also rate us, please. Give us a rating on wherever you're listening to podcast. It helps. Thanks, Matt, and thank you for listening. We will see you next week. Hear you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.